For the year of 2020, I released a word that the Lord gave me, the rise of the matriarchs. During this message, we're going to talk about the woman at the well in John 4. Now, at this time, Jesus had already been baptized. He had already chosen disciples and was already in ministry. It says now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. He had to pass through Samaria. The important part to note here is that most of the time the Jews went around Samaria because the Samaritan people were considered a pagan people, and that means that they worship pagan gods. They didn't hold true to the one God. So it is likely that Jesus was led by the Spirit to go to Samaria, because it does say he had to pass through Samaria, and he was Spirit-led. So in John 4:7 it reads, "A woman from Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink.' For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, 'How is it you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman from Samaria?' For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that's saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw the water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well to drink from it and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give to him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." It was at this point that this woman at the well knew he was not talking about just water. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water." Here she's asking him to give her that eternal life. Next, Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." He's calling her into the ministry. He's saying, "Go get your husband and come." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." Now I want to stop right there. This is really important because she isn't saying that I'm living sinfully. She's saying I am without. There's nowhere that I have found in the text, the original text, that indicates this is derogatory in some kind of way. But I can't find anywhere in here that says she had 5 husbands because of her sin. There's no indication here, and even in what Jesus is saying, there's no negative in this sentence. There's no indication that this means she was a bad woman or an adulterous woman of any sort. She says to him, I am without. So when she says, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet, it's because Jesus knew not only was she without, he knew what she had lost. You see, in biblical days, women were not like they are today here in America, where we have independent women who have jobs and they run households independently from men. That's not how it was in biblical days. Women needed to be provided for. And in order to be provided for, they needed a husband. There's nowhere in here, in John 4 or in the original text that I can find, that is specific about where these 5 husbands went. It doesn't say she was divorced. It doesn't say whether they died, whether they got sick. It doesn't actually say why she went through husbands. So at this time, Christ had not finished his mission yet. He had not died on the cross for our forgiveness and became the sacrificial lamb. So at this time, all people were still under the old covenant. There was no new covenant yet. So, if these people, the Samaritans, were pagan people who had multiple gods, that means they were disobedient. And if you refer back to Deuteronomy 28, that has the blessings for obedience and the curses for disobedience, then you can see an entire list of things that can happen to people who are disobedient. So, isn't it possible that this woman at the well, because they were a pagan people and were in disobedience, it's possible that her husbands could have wasted away with disease, could have died in drought. He could have been defeated by his enemies. He could have been eaten by wild beasts of the earth. He could have gone mad. It actually even reads in Deuteronomy 28:30, you shall betroth a wife, and another man shall ravish her. It says in Deuteronomy 28:41, you shall father sons and daughters, but they shall not be yours, for they will go into captivity. It's even possible that some of these husbands could have taken her into captivity. She could have been trafficked, forced into marriage. Who knows what happened while she's been living in this pagan land, unable to fix her situation because she's without a husband. So why did Jesus say, go call your husband and come here in the first place? Yes, he was calling her into ministry, but he was acknowledging her hurts. Everything the locusts had stolen from her, everything that she'd been robbed of, everything that the enemy took from her by force. And that is why she said, Sir, I perceive you to be a prophet. Because he understood it on a spiritual level. He wasn't just looking at a worldly realm and seeing a woman who has had multiple husbands and discarding her. He saw in the spiritual realm what she had been robbed of and what she needed healing of, and he saw her potential. He cared about her hurts. He tended to her wounds. That's because Jesus cares about the heart. So immediately, once she tells him, I perceive you to be a prophet, she starts to ask him things related to God. She says, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say in Jerusalem, that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. And when she says, but you say, she's talking about you Jews. Jesus said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. He says, you worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. As you can see here, when Jesus calls her into ministry, he didn't call her when she was perfect. Jesus called her when she still needed healing, when she was still broken. He called her first and then told her what she needed. Jesus goes on to say, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Then the woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will tell us all things. She says this because she's eagerly awaiting the Messiah, who is, by the way, actually the true husband. So when she says, I know the Messiah is coming, and when he comes, he'll tell us all things, her faith here is on the Messiah coming. And then she meets Jesus face to face. He said to her, I who speak to you am he. He says, I am the Messiah, the one you're talking about. Just then his disciples came back and they marveled that he was talking with a woman. Not just any woman, guys, a Samaritan woman, a pagan woman. But not just that. In these days, it's not like today. Women weren't given the privilege to learn the scriptures. Women weren't taught to read and understand intellectual things. Only the men studied in the temple. It says the disciples didn't ask him, what do you seek? Or why are you talking with her? They just left it be. Then it says, so the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? Then all the people went out of the town and were coming to him. Guys, she left her water jar. That was her old life. Her old life meant going to get water regularly for her household. She left the water jar. The water jar was not even important anymore to her. She left her old life and went straight to the people and started calling them to salvation. She began preaching. She became an evangelist, guys. Okay, I want to show you one more thing. Go to John 4 and verse 11. The woman said to Jesus, "Sir, you have nothing to draw the water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." She's saying, "Our father made this well." He's saying, "What I've got, the water that I can give you, is better than what you can get from this well." She's saying, "This well was our father's. Are you greater than our father?" Today, often in ministry, you'll see there are people just blindly following teachers. It's good to be under authority. It's good to listen and learn from other teachers. But if you're doing it blindly, just blindly following whatever somebody says and not consulting the Lord, you're just following man. Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." What he's saying here is, I'll give you new revelation. You don't just have to do the same thing that your father's done. I'll give you something new. I'll give you something even better. You won't have to keep going back to something that your father gave you over and over and over, like we see people in the church doing. You won't have to just keep going back to teachers. You'll hear something, and then the Lord will spring up in you revelation about it. You won't have to keep going to other people to get healed or to get a word from God, because he'll give it directly to you himself. What Jesus is saying here is, you don't have to keep being thirsty. If you come to me, you'll have a spring of water welling up. You'll have so much. You won't need a well. When I first started this recording, I was talking about the word that the Lord gave me for this year, the rise of the matriarchs. There are women all over the place that Jesus has met at the well. Jesus is coming to women, and not just the women that seem ideal to society. He's appealing to even those in pagan environments. Jesus has gone out to call women into ministry in this season. If you are one of these women, and you know you met Jesus at the well, receive healing. Be healed, and then preach. He's calling you to preach. Be an evangelist. Start spreading the gospel everywhere you are. If you work, do it at your workplace. Do it at your kid's school, at the park. Preach to the homeless. Preach to your neighbors.